In the silence of my own mind, fear often grows louder than any voice that threatens me. Threats are nothing but a reflection of the power someone thinks they have over you, but my strength lies in how I handle them. Every time they threaten me, I feel the weight of their words, like stones being thrown at glass. The worst part about being threatened is the haunting feeling of not knowing what could happen next. When they threaten me, it's not just my safety at risk, it's the peace I've fought so hard to build. Terrified yet determined, I will face my fears, no matter how many threats come my way. It's not the threat that terrifies me, but the power it gives to doubt myself. Each threat is a shadow, and I am learning to walk in the light, no matter how dark the world seems. Fear becomes a constant companion when you are on the receiving end of someone else's anger or resentment. Threats shake me, but they won't break me. My foundation runs deeper than their words. I'm terrified, yes, but it's a reminder that I'm human, full of vulnerability, yet capable of courage. There's a kind of terror that exists between reality and what we imagine could happen. When the world feels dangerous, I remind myself that fear is a visitor. It doesn't get to stay. It's the uncertainty that terrifies me, not knowing whether today will be like the others or something worse. They threaten me, but I remind myself that their words are only as powerful as I allow them to be. Every threat they make is an echo of their own insecurity, and I won't let it drown my peace. There's a strange power in being terrified. It's in those moments I learn just how strong I can be. Fear is a response, not a sentence. I choose how I react to their threats. I fear what could happen, but I refuse to live in that fear. The more they threaten, the stronger I grow. It's a paradox I'm learning to accept. Threats are like smoke. They can be frightening, but they fade if you stand strong enough to face them. I'm afraid, yes, but I am also wise enough to know that fear doesn't define who I am. There's terror in the unknown, but courage is what you find when you step into it, regardless. They can try to intimidate me, but the greatest weapon I possess is my ability to stay calm under pressure. Fear is a fleeting emotion, but the power to overcome it lives within me, always. It's not the threats that keep me awake. It's the overthinking of what could happen next. Every threat they make is an opportunity for me to show just how resilient I can be. The anxiety that comes from being threatened is a heavy load, but I remind myself that I don't have to carry it alone. I'm afraid of what they might do, but I won't let that fear paralyze me into inaction. Threats can only control me if I let them. I refuse to give away my power. The terror I feel isn't from their words, but from what I might do to protect myself. When they threaten me, it's a reminder that the world is unpredictable, but I am still in charge of my response. Sometimes the fear of being threatened becomes more unbearable than the threat itself. They can threaten me, but they cannot touch the peace I hold inside unless I let them. In the face of threat, it's not just survival that matters. It's how I choose to rebuild after the storm. Fear may paralyze me momentarily, but it cannot imprison my spirit unless I give it the key. They threaten and I tremble, but then I remind myself that this fear is temporary, and so too will be this moment. When fear knocks, I'll open the door, greet it, and walk through it with my head held high. I don't know how to stop being afraid, but I do know how to keep moving forward despite it. In the face of their threats, I find the strength to take one step after another, even when I can't see the whole path. What terrifies me the most isn't the threat, but the idea of losing myself in it. Each time they threaten me, it's a test of my own resolve to not be controlled by their anger or fear. I am terrified of what might happen, but I can't let that fear stop me from living today. The terror of the unknown is overwhelming, but I have learned that courage doesn't require certainty, just action. When threatened, I feel small, but I remind myself that I have survived worse, and I'll survive this too. Being threatened makes me feel exposed, but it also reminds me that there is strength in vulnerability. Their threats may shake my core, but they will never erase my sense of self-worth. The terror of being threatened is often worse than the threat itself, and I remind myself that I am capable of overcoming both. In times of fear, I remind myself that I control how I react, even if I cannot control what others do. It's terrifying to feel powerless, but it's empowering to know that my next step can create change. Fear tells me I am fragile, but I know my heart has been broken and healed enough to prove it's stronger than I thought. Being terrified of what might happen is part of being human, but it's also a reminder to cherish the present. The moment I stop fearing their threats is the moment I reclaim my peace. I am terrified of losing control, but I find peace in knowing that sometimes letting go is the only way forward. Threats may haunt my thoughts, but they cannot dictate my heart or soul. I am learning that terror does not always have to lead to panic. Sometimes it's just a sign to slow down and breathe. The fear I feel in these moments is only temporary, but the strength I gain will stay with me forever. In their threats, I find my own fear, but I also find the courage to face it head on. Each time they threaten me, I am reminded that I am more resilient than I realize. I'm terrified of what's to come, but I trust that fear can lead to growth if I allow it to. In every moment of terror, there's a chance to redefine my limits and grow stronger. Threats make me question my safety, but they never get to take away my inner peace. The fear that lingers after a threat is often louder than the threat itself, but it will quiet with time. Even when I am terrified, I remember that fear doesn't get to define who I am or who I become. When they threaten me, I don't let their word take root in my heart. I plant my own seeds of courage instead. Fear can be overwhelming, but I know it's just a passing storm. The sun will break through again. The power of a threat lies in the fear it instills, but the power of resilience is in how we choose to face it. Each threat I receive is a reminder that my strength doesn't come from a lack of fear, but from facing it head on. Sometimes, the hardest part is not the threat itself, but the way it shakes the foundation of my calm. I can't control when they threaten me, but I can control how I respond, and I choose to respond with strength. Fear is a shadow that fades when I stand in my own light. Being threatened makes me feel small, but I always find the courage to stand tall again. Every threat they make is an opportunity for me to remember just how resilient I am. Terror doesn't own me, no matter how many times I feel it creeping in. I own my response. The fear that comes with a threat might seem endless, but I know that courage is born in these very moments. Their words may be sharp, but my spirit is stronger. I won't let their threats chip away at me. It's terrifying, yes, but I remind myself that fear is only temporary, while my strength is eternal. When faced with fear, I remind myself that it's not about avoiding it, but about moving forward despite it. Each time I face a threat, I'm reminded that I've walked through darkness before and emerged stronger. Fear can rattle my nerves, but it can't take my peace unless I let it. Even in the face of terror, I have the choice to be brave, and I will always choose bravery. The most terrifying part of threats is the uncertainty, but I find strength in the certainty of my own resilience. It's easy to feel powerless when threatened, but I find my power by choosing not to be ruled by fear. Each threat is a test of my resilience, and with each test, I grow more confident in my ability to rise. Fear has a way of making the world seem smaller, but courage helps me see the endless possibilities beyond it. It's terrifying to be threatened, but I remind myself that fear is just a feeling, not a fact. The fear that comes with threats can feel suffocating, but I breathe through it, knowing it will pass. In the face of threats, I remind myself that my strength is not measured by how I feel, but by how I act. Being terrified doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. And from that humanity, strength grows. The terror of being threatened is a fleeting moment, but the courage to face it will last a lifetime. Every threat I face teaches me a little more about my own capacity for bravery. Fear may come in waves, but I ride through it, knowing that I won't drown in it. It's hard to feel anything but terror when threatened, but I know that peace is something I can reclaim. The fear of what might happen is paralyzing, but the courage to move forward is as liberating. I may be terrified, but I will not let fear control me. My actions are mine to choose. Each threat is a reminder of the power I have to choose my response, and that choice can lead to peace. Fear will try to dictate my actions, but I refuse to let it guide my choices. The terror of a threat is real, but it's not the final word. I am the one who writes my story. In the midst of fear, I remember that I've survived before and I'll survive again. Every time fear creeps in, I remember that I have the power to push it back and choose a new path.